Stop for a moment and check the Australian 10-cent coins around you. That little coin may look completely ordinary, but some Australian 10-cent pieces can become surprisingly interesting to collectors when they have the right date, rarity, condition, or minting variety. Before you drop your change into a jar or spend it at the checkout, take a closer look. You might notice something that most people would completely miss. Today, we're uncovering the top 5 rare and highly collectible Australian 10-cent coins that every serious coin hunter should know about. These coins can stand out because of scarce production numbers, unusual minting characteristics, special varieties, or genuine errors that make particular examples different from the millions of standard coins produced. And when rarity meets strong collector demand, the value of a coin can rise far beyond its original 10-cent face value. But here's where things get interesting. 2 coins with the same year can sometimes have very different values. The smallest details can matter, including the condition of the coin, the presence of a genuine error, the exact variety, and whether collectors have actually paid strong prices for similar examples. That's why knowing what to look for is far more important than simply finding an old coin. So grab your Australian change and keep your eyes open. Check those old coin jars, drawers, wallets, and collections, because one unusual 10-cent coin could be hiding among dozens of ordinary pieces. And make sure you stay until the end, because the number 1 entry is one of the most exciting coins on today's list. If you love rare Australian coins, valuable varieties, and hidden treasures, subscribe to Rare US. Coin Secret and turn on notifications so you never miss another discovery. Now, let's begin the countdown with number 1. Stop for a second and take a close look at your old Australian 10-cent coins, because one small coin from 1975 could be hiding a fascinating piece of Australia's decimal history. Today we're taking a deep look at the Australian 10-cent 1975 coin in very fine condition. A classic coin that has survived for more than 5 decades and continues to attract attention from collectors who enjoy Australian decimal coinage. At first glance, it may look like nothing more than a small piece of everyday change. But when you examine the date, design, condition, surfaces, and possible varieties, you begin to see why old Australian coins can be so exciting to collect. The year 1975 takes us back to an important period in Australia's early decimal currency era. Decimal currency had been introduced on 14 February 1966, replacing the older pounds, shillings, and pence system with dollars and cents. The 10-cent denomination was part of that original decimal introduction, meaning a 1975 example belongs to the first decade of Australia's modern decimal coinage. By 1975, Australians had become familiar with the new decimal system, and 10-cent coins were moving through everyday transactions across the country. These coins could have been used in shops, carried in pockets, stored in household containers, or placed into cash registers. At the time, very few people would have imagined that decades later collectors would be carefully studying these same coins for their history, condition, and unusual characteristics. One of the most recognizable features of the Australian 10-cent coin is the beautiful lyrebird design. The reverse features a representation of a lyrebird, a uniquely Australian bird with an extraordinary tail and cultural significance. The design was created by renowned coin designer Stuart Devlin and has remained the standard reverse design of Australia's 10-cent coin. The lyrebird gives the coin an unmistakably Australian identity. When you look closely at a well-preserved 1975 example, you can appreciate the detail in the bird, its tail, the surrounding lettering, and the overall composition. Even though the coin is small, the design demonstrates how much artistic detail can be placed onto a compact piece of metal. The obverse carries the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, representing Australia's constitutional history during the 1970s. The combination of the Queen's portrait on one side and the Australian lyrebird on the other creates a fascinating contrast between national identity and Australia's constitutional heritage. For collectors, this combination is an important part of the character of early Australian decimal coinage. The physical specifications of the Australian 10-cent coin also make it easy to identify. The Royal Australian Mint lists the denomination as circular, with a milled edge, a diameter of 23.6 millimeters, and a mass of 5.65 grams. Its composition is 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving it the familiar copper-nickel appearance associated with Australian decimal coins of the era. Your very fine example is especially interesting because it represents a coin that has experienced circulation while still retaining substantial design detail. Collectors examining a very fine coin will typically pay close attention to the portrait, date, lettering, lyrebird, and other major design elements. The clearer these features remain, the more attractive the coin can become to someone building a collection. The color of an older circulated coin can also be fascinating. A 1975 10-cent coin may display silver gray, darker, warmer, or slightly toned areas depending on its history. Natural surface changes can develop through circulation and storage, giving individual coins their own appearance. This is one reason collectors enjoy comparing several examples of the same date. A naturally aged surface should not automatically be treated as something that needs to be removed. If your coin has developed an attractive or unusual appearance over the decades, preserving its original surface is usually preferable to aggressive cleaning. Scrubbing, polishing, or applying chemicals can permanently change the coin and leave marks that cannot be reversed. The age of the 1975 10-cent coin is one of its strongest collecting attractions. A coin from 1975 has now passed through several generations, surviving changes in technology, fashion, currency habits, and Australian society. Holding one today provides a direct physical connection with everyday life in Australia more than 50 years ago. The official Royal Australian Mint records approximately 50.9 million 10-cent coins produced for 1975. That figure is important because it helps put the word rare into perspective. The standard 1975 10-cent coin is not automatically an ultra-rare coin simply because it is old. Instead, collector interest can become much stronger when an individual example has exceptional preservation, a genuine variety, or an authenticated mint error. This is where the search becomes exciting. When collectors examine older coins, they don't simply look at the date. They study the entire piece. They look for unusual design details, unusual strikes, possible doubled features, off-center production, distinctive die characteristics, and other genuine minting abnormalities that could separate one example from an ordinary coin. However, an unusual appearance does not automatically mean a valuable mint error. A scratch, dent, discoloration, environmental damage, or wear can occur after a coin leaves the mint. That is why careful comparison and professional identification are important before assigning a large premium to any unusual-looking feature. If you're examining your 1975 10-cent coin at home, good lighting can make a huge difference. Turn the coin slowly and inspect the date, portrait, lettering, lyrebird edge, and surfaces. A magnifying glass can help you see small details more clearly, especially when you're comparing your coin with photographs of normal examples. Condition is another major part of the value equation. A very fine coin has genuine circulation history, but its major details remain visible. A coin with strong lettering, a clearly defined lyrebird, recognizable portrait details, and attractive surfaces can be much more appealing than a heavily worn example. Collector demand also depends on what kind of collection the buyer is building. Some collectors want every date in the Australian 10-cent series. Others specialize in early decimal coins, Australian wildlife designs, Stuart Devlin designs, or possible varieties and errors. This variety of collecting interests creates ongoing opportunities for older 10-cent coins. The market value of a standard 1975 10-cent coin should be approached realistically. Because the official mintage was about 50.9 million, an ordinary circulated example is generally an affordable collectible rather than an automatic fortune. Its value can rise with stronger condition, exceptional eye appeal, scarcity, or a genuine variety. For a very fine example, the most important thing is to identify the exact coin and evaluate its actual condition rather than relying on a dramatic headline price. The Royal Australian Mint itself explains that coin valuations involve multiple factors, including rarity, condition, and collector interest. This is an important lesson for anyone searching for valuable coins. A large price printed on an online listing does not automatically mean that the coin has sold for that amount. Real market evidence is much more useful. Collectors should compare completed sales, reputable references, professional opinions, and coins that are genuinely comparable in condition and characteristics. The most exciting possibilities usually come from exceptional examples. A high-grade specimen with outstanding preservation can attract more attention than an ordinary circulated piece. A genuinely rare and authenticated mint error can also create significant additional interest. These are the characteristics that can transform a normal old coin into something much more desirable. If you believe your 1975 10-cent coin has an unusual feature, don't immediately clean it or alter the surface. Preserve it exactly as you found it. Take clear photographs, compare the coin with reliable references, and if the characteristic appears genuinely unusual, consider professional evaluation. Proper storage is another simple way to protect your collection. A suitable coin holder or capsule can reduce unnecessary handling and protect the surfaces from scratches and environmental exposure. When examining the coin, hold it by the edges instead of repeatedly touching the main faces. The journey of a 1975 10-cent coin can be just as fascinating as its design. Imagine this small coin entering circulation in the 1970s, passing through stores and households, spending years inside pockets and cash registers, and eventually being saved by someone who recognized its historical character. Decades later, it can become part of a collector's search for Australia's early decimal treasures. That connection with ordinary life is one of the greatest attractions of coin collecting. These aren't just pieces of metal. They can be reminders of the people, places, businesses, and everyday transactions that shaped their journey. A circulated 1975 10-cent coin can therefore preserve a tiny piece of Australian social history. The 10-cent series also gives collectors an enormous range of dates to explore. From the first decimal issues in 1966 through later decades, the consistent Lyrebird reverse creates a fascinating timeline of Australian coinage. The 1975 issue sits near the beginning of that long story and can be an important piece for anyone assembling a complete collection. The phrase "coins that could make you a millionaire" certainly creates excitement, but smart collectors know that extraordinary values require extraordinary circumstances. A normal 1975 10-cent coin should not automatically be described as a $1,000,000 coin. The exciting possibilities are found in genuine rarities, authenticated mint errors, exceptionally high grades, and coins with strong documented market demand. The real treasure is the knowledge you gain while searching. Learning how Australian coins were designed, minted, graded, preserved, and traded can make every coin hunt more exciting. Once you understand the difference between ordinary wear and a genuine minting characteristic, you become much better at recognizing coins that deserve further investigation. So if you have an Australian 10-cent 1975 coin in very fine condition, don't overlook it simply because it is a small denomination. Examine the date, study the Queen Elizabeth II portrait, inspect the magnificent Lyrebird, check the edge, and carefully examine the surfaces. Preserve the coin before making any decisions about cleaning, selling, or grading it. The Australian 10-cent 1975 coin represents an important chapter in the nation's decimal currency story. Its Stuart Devlin Lyrebird design, copper-nickel composition, circular shape, milled edge, and connection with Australia's early decimal years give it a distinctive identity. With more than 5 decades of history behind it, this little coin can be a fascinating addition to a collection. So the next time you find an old Australian 10-cent coin, stop before you spend it and take a second look. Check the year, examine the condition, study the design, search for genuine unusual characteristics, and learn the history behind the coin. You may have a normal collectible, an attractive example, or something unusual that deserves professional attention. The excitement is not just in the price tag, it's in the discovery. Next up, the Australian 10-cent 1977 coin in circulated condition, a coin that has survived for almost half a century and continues to attract the attention of collectors searching through old collections, family coin jars, forgotten drawers, and inherited albums. At first glance, it may appear to be nothing more than 10 cents, but the date, design, age, condition, and any unusual characteristics can make an old coin much more interesting than its original face value suggests. The year 1977 takes us back to the early years of Australia's decimal currency era. Australia introduced decimal currency in 1966, replacing pounds, shillings, and pence with dollars and cents. The 10-cent denomination was part of that historic transition, making every early example part of Australia's modern monetary story. By 1977, Australians had become accustomed to decimal coins, and 10-cent pieces were being used every day across the country. The 1977 issue is especially interesting because the Royal Australian Mint records a mintage of approximately 10.9 million 10-cent coins for that year. Compared with some other years, that is a relatively smaller production figure, making the date particularly worthwhile for collectors to recognize. However, mintage alone does not automatically make every 1977 coin extremely rare. The real excitement begins when collectors combine the date with condition, preservation, varieties, and possible minting errors. One of the most beautiful characteristics of Australia's 10-cent series is the famous Lyrebird design. The reverse features the Australian Lyrebird, a remarkable native bird known for its extraordinary tail and ability to imitate sounds. The design was created by renowned Australian coin designer Stuart Devlin and has remained the standard reverse design since the introduction of decimal 10-cent coins. When you look closely at the lyrebird side of a 1977 10-cent coin, you can see why this design has remained so popular for generations. The bird's body, tail, lettering, and surrounding details create an attractive composition on a relatively small surface. A well-preserved circulated example can still retain enough detail for collectors to appreciate the artistry that went into creating it. The opposite side carries the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, reflecting Australia's constitutional history during the 1970s. The combination of the Queen's portrait and the Australian lyrebird creates a fascinating balance between Australia's constitutional heritage and its distinctive national wildlife. For collectors, both sides of the coin deserve careful examination because each carries important historical and artistic information. The physical design of the 10-cent coin is also distinctive. It is a circular copper-nickel coin with a milled edge, measuring approximately 23.6 millimeters across and weighing about 5.65 grams. Its composition is 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving the coin its familiar metallic appearance. Because your example is circulated, its surfaces may show signs of the journey it has taken since 1977. You might see small marks, areas of wear, darker patches, or natural changes in the surface. These characteristics can actually make the coin more interesting because they show that it spent time in everyday circulation rather than remaining untouched in storage. The color of an older circulated coin can vary considerably. A 1977 10-cent piece might appear bright, gray, darker, or slightly toned, depending on its environment and storage history. Natural surface changes can create different appearances from one coin to another. For collectors, the key is to distinguish natural aging from damage or deliberate alteration. If your coin has an unusual surface color, don't immediately try to polish it. Cleaning an old collectible coin can create scratches and permanently change its original appearance. A naturally aged surface can preserve evidence of the coin's journey and may be much more desirable to collectors than a heavily cleaned surface. The age of the coin is another reason to appreciate it. A 1977 10-cent piece has survived decades of changing technology, changing lifestyles, and changing Australian society. It may have passed through shops, businesses, households, pockets, and cash registers before eventually finding its way into a collection. This history is what makes coin collecting so fascinating. You're not simply looking at a piece of metal. You're looking at an object that existed during a particular moment in time. The 1977 10-cent coin provides a direct connection to Australia's early decimal period and to everyday life during the late 1970s. The relatively low recorded mintage compared with several surrounding years makes 1977 an interesting date for collectors to keep an eye on. The Royal Australian Mint lists 1976 at 57.1 million, 1977 at 10.9 million, 1978 at 48.4 million, and 1979 at 37 million. This places the 1977 issue noticeably below many nearby production figures. But rarity is never determined by mintage alone. Collectors also consider how many examples survive, how many remain in attractive condition, whether unusual varieties exist, and how much demand there is for the particular coin. A coin with a lower mintage can be interesting, but a genuinely scarce variety or exceptional specimen can be far more desirable. This is where careful searching becomes exciting. Collectors don't simply look at the date and immediately decide what a coin is worth. They inspect the entire coin for unusual characteristics. The date, lettering, portrait, lyrebird, edge, strike, and surfaces all deserve attention. Minting errors are another fascinating area of Australian coin collecting. Occasionally, coins can leave the mint with genuine production abnormalities. An unusual strike, off-center design, doubled feature, or other authenticated mint characteristic can make an individual coin much more interesting than a normal example. However, not every unusual mark is a mint error. Scratches, dents, corrosion, discoloration, and damage can occur after a coin enters circulation. That's why a suspected error should always be compared with reliable examples, and when appropriate, examined by an experienced numismatist before assigning it a major premium. When you inspect your 1977 10-cent coin, use good lighting and take your time. Start with the date, then examine the Queen Elizabeth II portrait, the lyrebird, the lettering, the edge, and the overall strike. A magnifying glass can help reveal small details that are difficult to see with the naked eye. Condition is one of the most important factors affecting collector interest. A circulated example can still be attractive when its major design details remain strong. Look for clear lettering, a recognizable portrait, visible lyrebird details, and surfaces that retain their original character. The market value of a standard 1977 10-cent coin depends on its exact condition and current collector demand. Because the issue had a recorded mintage of approximately 10.9 million, an ordinary circulated example should not automatically be presented as a million-dollar rarity. Instead, its appeal comes from its age, relatively lower mintage compared with nearby dates, condition, and the possibility of discovering an exceptional variety or error. For an ordinary circulated specimen, the market is generally modest, with stronger examples potentially attracting premiums over face value. A particularly attractive high-grade example, a scarce variety, or a properly authenticated mint error can command substantially more attention. This is why identifying the exact characteristics of your individual coin is more important than simply seeing the year 1977. When researching prices, always look beyond dramatic online asking prices. A seller can list a coin for almost any amount, but that does not prove that collectors are actually paying that price. Completed sales, reputable auction records, recognized coin references, and professional opinions provide a much stronger foundation for understanding market value. The possibility of finding something unusual is what makes coin hunting so exciting. You might examine many ordinary 10-cent pieces before discovering one with a characteristic that makes you stop and look twice. That moment of discovery is one of the greatest rewards of collecting. If you have a 1977 10-cent coin that looks especially attractive, preserve it carefully. Place it in an appropriate protective holder and avoid unnecessary handling. When examining the coin, hold it by the edges rather than touching the main surfaces, helping to protect the original appearance. Never clean the coin simply because it looks old or dirty. Polishing, rubbing, or applying chemicals can permanently damage the surface and remove the authentic character that collectors value. If you are uncertain about the coin's condition, leaving it untouched is usually the safest approach. Storage also matters. Keep the coin away from excessive moisture, harsh chemicals, and unnecessary contact. A suitable coin capsule or protective holder can help prevent additional scratches and environmental exposure while still allowing you to view the coin. If your 1977 10-cent coin appears unusually well preserved or seems to contain a genuine minting characteristic, professional evaluation can be worthwhile. An experienced numismatist or reputable grading service can help identify the coin, assess its condition, and determine whether a suspected variety or error is genuine. Imagine the journey of your coin since 1977. It could have been handed to a shopkeeper, carried in a pocket, placed into a cash register, saved in a household container, or passed between family members. After decades of circulation, it may now be sitting quietly in your collection waiting to be examined. That story is what makes old coins so special. A small 10-cent piece can preserve a connection to ordinary Australian life during another era. The 1977 date gives collectors a window into the country's early decimal years, while the lyrebird design provides a lasting representation of Australian wildlife. The Australian 10-cent series offers collectors an enormous collecting opportunity. With the same famous lyrebird design appearing across many years, enthusiasts can compare dates, mintages, conditions, and varieties while building a complete collection. The 1977 issue is particularly interesting because of its comparatively lower recorded production figure. The dream of discovering a coin worth an enormous amount of money certainly adds excitement to the hobby, but the smartest collectors understand that extraordinary values require extraordinary evidence. A normal circulated 1977 10-cent coin should not automatically be called a millionaire coin. The genuine opportunities come from exceptional condition, true scarcity, authenticated mint errors, or other characteristics that create strong collector demand. The most valuable thing you can develop as a collector is knowledge. Learn the standard designs, understand grading, study minting processes, compare genuine examples, and research actual sales. With every coin you examine, you become better at recognizing the details that separate an ordinary coin from an exceptional one. So if you have an Australian 10-cent 1977 coin, don't simply toss it back into a pile of loose change. Check the date, study the lyrebird, examine the Queen Elizabeth II portrait, inspect the edge, and carefully look at the surfaces. Preserve the coin before cleaning or altering it, especially if you believe it has an unusual characteristic. The Australian 10-cent 1977 coin is a fascinating survivor from Australia's early decimal era. Its Stuart Devlin lyrebird design, Queen Elizabeth II portrait, copper-nickel composition, classic circular shape, and comparatively low recorded mintage give it an interesting place in Australian coin collecting. With more than 4 decades of history behind it, this little coin deserves a closer look. So the next time an old Australian 10-cent coin lands in your hand, stop before you spend it and take another look. Check the year, examine the condition, study every detail, and investigate anything that looks genuinely unusual. You may have a standard collectible, an especially attractive example, or a coin that deserves professional attention. The excitement is in the search, the research, and the possibility of discovering something unexpected. Next up, the Australian 50-cent 1998 coin in circulated condition, a coin from an important period in Australia's decimal currency story. At first glance, it may look like an ordinary old 50-cent piece, but the date, design, condition, history, and any unusual characteristics can make it worth much closer attention. If you have one sitting in an old collection, coin jar, drawer, or family album, don't overlook it before examining it carefully. The year 1998 was particularly interesting for Australian 50-cent collectors because the denomination included both the familiar standard coat of arms design and a special commemorative issue. The Royal Australian Mint records approximately 22.4 million commemorative 1998 50-cent coins, celebrating the 200th anniversary of the voyage of Bass and Flinders. The commemorative design was created by Vladimir Gottwald. This makes the year especially interesting because identifying the exact 1998 design is the first step in understanding the coin you have. The history of Australia's 50-cent denomination goes back to the introduction of decimal currency on 14 February 1966. The first 50-cent coins were circular and contained 80% silver, but rising silver prices led to the suspension of that design. A new copper-nickel, 12-sided 50-cent coin was introduced in 1969, establishing the distinctive format that collectors recognize today. By 1998, the 12-sided 50-cent coin had already become one of Australia's most recognizable pieces of decimal currency. Its unusual shape was practical as well as visually distinctive, helping separate the denomination from other Australian coins. For collectors, that 12-sided format immediately gives the coin a strong Australian identity. If your 1998 coin is the standard coat of arms issue, the reverse features the Commonwealth coat of arms, including the kangaroo and emu supporting the shield beneath the Commonwealth star. This classic design was sculpted by Stuart Devlin and became one of the defining images of Australian decimal 50-cent coinage. If your coin is the commemorative Bass and Flinders issue, however, the reverse tells a very different story. It commemorates the 200th anniversary of the voyage of Matthew Flinders and George Bass, adding a historical connection that makes the coin particularly fascinating for collectors of Australian commemorative pieces. The Royal Australian Mint specifically identifies the 1998 50-cent commemorative issue as celebrating this important voyage. The obverse of the coin carries the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, reflecting Australia's constitutional history during the period. Looking closely at the portrait can also help you evaluate the condition of your circulated example. Areas with stronger remaining detail can contribute to a more attractive overall appearance. A circulated coin has its own story to tell. Your 1998 50-cent piece may have passed through shops, wallets, pockets, cash registers, and household collections before eventually reaching you. Every mark and change in appearance can be a reminder that this small piece of metal has been part of everyday Australian life for decades. The surface color of a circulated coin can vary considerably. Depending on storage and environmental exposure, an older copper-nickel coin can develop darker, warmer, or slightly toned areas. These changes can make individual examples look different from one another and give each coin its own visual character. If your 1998 50-cent coin has an unusual color, don't immediately assume that the color alone makes it rare. Collectors look at the complete coin, including its design, condition, originality, and possible mint characteristics. Natural aging can be interesting, but deliberate alteration or post-mint damage is a different matter. Original surfaces are important to preserve. If the coin looks dirty or aged, avoid aggressively polishing or scrubbing it. Cleaning can create scratches and permanently change the surface. For collectors, an authentic circulated appearance can be much more desirable than a coin that has been heavily treated. The commemorative 1998 issue is especially interesting because it connects the coin with Australian exploration history. Bass and Flinders undertook a significant voyage around the Australian coastline, and the 200th anniversary gave the Royal Australian Mint an opportunity to preserve that story on circulating currency. This is one of the great attractions of commemorative coins. They can turn historical events into objects that ordinary people can hold. Instead of reading only about an event in a book, collectors can own a physical reminder of the occasion through a coin that was created to mark it. The standard and commemorative 1998 50-cent coins also demonstrate why identifying the exact design matters. Two coins can share the same denomination and year while having completely different reverse designs and collecting stories. Before researching value, always determine exactly which 1998 50-cent coin you have. Rarity is another important part of the collecting equation. The commemorative 1998 issue had a recorded mintage of about 22.4 million, while the standard 1998 issue is not listed separately in the Royal Australian Mint's table. So collectors should avoid assuming that every 1998 50-cent coin is automatically an ultra-rare piece. Instead, the strongest collector interest can come from exceptional condition, unusual varieties, authenticated mint errors, or other characteristics that genuinely separate an individual coin from normal examples. This is where careful inspection becomes exciting. Take a close look at the date, lettering, portrait, reverse design, edge, and overall strike. Use good lighting and, if available, a magnifying glass. Compare your coin with reliable photographs of normal examples and pay attention to anything that appears genuinely different. Mint errors can sometimes create additional collector interest. An unusual strike, off-center design, doubled feature, or other genuine production characteristic may make an individual coin more desirable. However, scratches, dents, corrosion, and damage that occurred after minting should not automatically be described as errors. If you believe your coin has an unusual mint characteristic, preserve it exactly as you found it. Don't polish it or attempt to repair the feature. Clear photographs and professional examination can help establish whether the characteristic is genuine and significant. Condition is another major factor. A circulated 1998 50-cent coin can still be attractive when the major design elements remain clearly visible. Strong lettering, a recognizable portrait, clear reverse details, and pleasing surfaces can all contribute to collector appeal. The current market value of a normal 1998 50-cent coin depends on the exact design, condition, originality, and collector demand. It should not automatically be described as a $1 million coin simply because it is old or commemorative. The Royal Australian Mint explains that coin values depend on factors such as rarity, condition, and collector interest. For ordinary circulated examples, the market is generally in the affordable collectible range, while particularly attractive, high-grade, scarce, or authenticated examples can command stronger premiums. The important point is that the exact individual coin matters much more than a dramatic headline number. When researching prices, focus on genuine market evidence rather than large asking prices on online listings. A seller can advertise a coin for a high amount without actually selling it for that price. Comparing completed sales and obtaining an expert assessment can provide a much more realistic understanding of what collectors are currently willing to pay. The possibility of discovering an exceptional example is what makes coin hunting so exciting. You might examine several ordinary 1998 50-cent coins before finding one with a feature that deserves a second look. That moment of discovery is one of the most rewarding parts of collecting. If you have a particularly attractive circulated example, protect it carefully. A suitable coin capsule or protective holder can help prevent additional scratches and unnecessary handling. When touching the coin, hold it by the edges rather than repeatedly touching the main surfaces. Storage also matters. Keep the coin away from excessive moisture and harsh chemicals, and avoid placing it loose with objects that could scratch its surfaces. Good preservation can help maintain the appearance and collector appeal of an older coin. If your 1998 50-cent piece appears exceptionally well preserved or contains a possible mint error, professional evaluation can be worthwhile. A knowledgeable numismatist or reputable grading service can help establish the coin's identity, condition, authenticity, and potential collector significance. Imagine the journey this coin may have taken since 1998. It could have been used during an ordinary purchase, placed inside someone's wallet, saved by a family member, or eventually forgotten in a drawer. Today, that same coin can become the subject of careful research and a fascinating addition to an Australian decimal collection. The Australian 50-cent series offers collectors an enormous variety of designs and historical subjects. From the classic coat of arms pieces to commemorative issues celebrating major events and anniversaries, the denomination provides a fascinating timeline of Australian history. The 1998 issue is especially interesting because it connects the denomination with the story of Bass and Flinders and Australia's exploration heritage. The dream of finding a coin worth an enormous fortune certainly makes searching exciting, but knowledgeable collectors understand that extraordinary prices require extraordinary evidence. A standard circulated 1998 50-cent coin should not automatically be called a millionaire coin. The genuinely exciting possibilities are rare varieties, authenticated mint errors, and exceptional high-grade examples with documented collector demand. The greatest advantage you can develop as a collector is knowledge. Learn the different 1998 designs, understand grading, study genuine minting characteristics, compare reliable examples, and research actual sales. The more familiar you become with Australian coinage, the easier it becomes to recognize a coin that deserves further investigation. So if you have an Australian 50-cent 1998 coin, don't simply toss it back into a pile of loose change. Identify the reverse design, check the date, inspect the portrait, examine the 12-sided edge, study the surfaces, and look carefully for anything genuinely unusual. Preserve it before cleaning or altering it, especially if you think you may have something special. The Australian 50-cent 1998 coin represents an exciting chapter in Australian decimal history. Whether yours carries the classic Commonwealth coat of arms or the commemorative Bass and Flinders design, it connects today's collector with Australia's past. Its distinctive 12-sided shape, historical imagery, age, and potential for exceptional varieties make it a coin well worth examining. So the next time you find a 1998 Australian 50-cent coin, stop and take a second look. Check the design, study the condition, research its history, and investigate any unusual characteristics carefully. You may have an ordinary collectible, an attractive example, or a coin that deserves professional attention. The excitement is in the discovery, and every discovery begins with taking a closer look. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the Australian 50-cent 1998 coin. Keep searching, keep learning, and keep preserving the fascinating pieces of Australian history that you discover. Every coin has a story, every design opens another chapter, and sometimes an ordinary-looking 50-cent piece can lead you toward an extraordinary collecting discovery. Happy collecting, and good luck with your next remarkable Australian coin find.